129 at the local comic book shop. I asked to have it out. It was a $500 comic book. And when we flipped through it, I was telling myself, this is a nice copy. And it gave me confidence to spend that kind of money on the comic book.
Steve?
Yeah, what's up?
My fault. I didn't press a button. So could you repeat your first hint to yourself again?
Now we're live.
Now we're live.
Now we're live.
Sorry, guys.
Are you kidding? We're starting all over.
We're live. We all said hello already.
Steve made the greatest revelation in the history of comics, and everybody missed it.
Oh my God.
My mind is blown with the knowledge and thought process you gave us.
Steve.
I'll never be the same.
Okay,
Shane's unveiling is lost.
We're pressing the reset button, and we're starting over.
Well, just give your first item again, and if Mr. Woods wants to show his comic, he can again as well.
But the topic is if you could go back in time, which we just did apparently. 3 things that you would do different in the hobby, okay? And mine are practical tips. And my first one is to pull the comic book, a back issue, no matter where you are, out of the bag and the board, and do a thorough inspection. And don't just purchase it and look at it based on what you see through the cover. And I had mentioned that there are many things, panels can be cut out. And Matt Woods, we will defer to your ASM 129.
Is it Shane's?
It's Shane's, actually.
This is a classic book that Shane O'Brien bought way back in 1974, and he added this to his collection. So, Shane, if you're out there watching, I want to thank you for such an awesome book, and thanks for putting your name right on the back panels. You couldn't ask for a better placement.
Well, I'll tell you something. I've got a bunch of these books that have names and stuff on them. As a matter of fact, I showed one not too long ago that had Gary's name on the top. So it was obviously Gary's comic book. I think I know which Gary it was, too.
Was it a Conan book?
No, it was not a Conan book.
Well, what I was saying is, you should inspect it. If you're going to spend your hard-earned dollars on a raw comic book or you buy it off of eBay, don't take it for granted and inspect it. But it isn't all about looking for negative things like a panel missing or loose staples or staining or whatever. Right. It's to confirm a positive purchase. This is going to be a good buy. This is going to be money well spent in a good comic book to put in the PC, an investment, whatever the case is. So that's my first practical tip, stealing that from Reggie, that I wish I would do all the time, and I violate this rule on a regular basis. Oh, by the way, but I should do that. And if someone is ever opposed to you doing that, you should take a pause and really reconsider why you can't do that if you're there in person. So that's my first tip. All right, we're gonna I have a million questions for Matt about that ASM 129. Is that the reason it's not graded? How did that happen? Did you know? We'll talk later offline. Okay.
Is there a good eraser? Is that my question?
Yeah. Is Shane famous? Is my next question. No. Okay.
He might be.
He might be. Now. My second tip is to negotiate.
Smart.
Negotiating is fun. It isn't combative. This is a hobby, and when you're negotiation, it shows respect on both sides, and it should be respectful negotiation. But if you're going to spend $50, $100, $500 on original art or a raw comic book, and you're going to build a relationship with somebody, negotiations are a healthy part of the hobby. It's fun. And it can negotiating in the comic book hobby can be carried over into outside of the hobby, and give you confidence in, for example, purchasing a home and negotiating that transaction, or just other areas, buying a used car or anything like that that is on the secondary market.
Yeah, but you know, Steve, there's some people that don't. Well, let me put it this way: there are some people who don't like doing that. Thus, they want to know what's the price, no matter what it is you're doing, but especially in comics. But there are other people who don't know how to do it. You know, and I've encountered that a bunch of times. I mean, being a lawyer, I've negotiated quite often, and there are different ways of doing it. You play certain things. Are you trying to take an advantage of somebody? Are you not? Are you trying to be fair? Are you not? You know, there are different levels also of knowledge that you're involved with. You know, you could be talking to someone who thinks a book is worth like $100 when you know, for example, over the last year or the last 90 days, the average has been, you know, $60, for example. So that makes it a little bit more difficult, I think. It's not always that even-handed, at least in my view.
Yeah.
Respectful negotiation, so it isn't a matter of always go low and whatever, but I think it's important, because if you are showing that you're knowledgeable and they are knowledgeable, then negotiating is fair and fun and part of the hobby, in my opinion. And I didn't do that early on. That's why this is an important one that I'm adding to this, because I didn't know. I was afraid, or I was too young, or it just wasn't part of the hobby for me. But now that I am at a different level in what I'm original art, signed books, there is so much gray area with the ask and there being nothing to compare it to. When you're talking about a signed ASM, my goals, it requires negotiation and an understanding and a respect for both sides of the person knowing what they have, them knowing I want it, and us respecting each other. It's an interesting part of the hobby, and something that I definitely wanted to talk about.
Okay.
I had a question for you for negotiation. Do you think just overall people set their prices based off of they know people will negotiate? Or do you is there a way to know hey, if I go on this platform, most people just price it at that's the locked price versus how do you kind of know if there's nothing to compare against?
I would say once you pass a certain dollar amount, it's all negotiable. And it's not a very high dollar amount. It is very easy to spend your money. It is very hard to get somebody else to buy your items. So a healthy understanding of that, if you are selling some items to fund the hobby, you need to have that in the back of your mind and be able to negotiate and know what you have and meet whatever tolerance level you're willing to have to meet a different goal. It's all that is negotiations, and they don't know what your goals are. What do you value that item that you have, or maybe you don't value it like they do, and vice versa. When you go to spend your money, you need to, are you a regular customer for this person, and are you being reasonable in negotiating, or are they offering it to you already at a fair price? So it requires a level of understanding of the commodity that you're dealing with, but it is not the thing that I would want to impart with anyone that's afraid to negotiate is it is not scary, and it can be fun if you do it with a level of respect and understanding, is all I'm getting at.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
Okay. All right. Well, that's that. All right. Let me get to number 3. Number 3 is built on number 2 almost, and it is fostering relationships. If you're going to be in the hobby for a long time and grow, and your collection's going to grow and you're going to advance and go for bigger books, the community is real and you should build good relationships. Doug Bratton's in here. He posted, I'm going to throw Doug Bratton and the Bratton brothers right under the bus. They posted on Instagram an ASM 316 newsstand with a Mark Jewelers insert that they posted it, and I Instagram messaged them and said, they didn't say it's available. I just said, I'm interested if it ever becomes available. And because of our good relationship, we were able to, he was very active in sending me photos and explaining what he believed the grade might be. And we already know each other. I trust him. I trust his grading. He knows who I am. We weren't concerned about sending money via whatever Venmo, PayPal. So it pays dividends to foster relationships. You have follow-on transactions where negotiations get easier. So that's my third tip. It's huge, and your reputation in the community will open up avenues. People know what I'm interested in, what my goal is. And Wayne, for example, texts me all the time, signed ASM books. And I'm like, I have that one already. And he's not
Sorry,
deterred.
Stephanie. Sorry.
Matt Woods and Wayne will spend my money and Stephanie's money faster than you would know. But
Hey, you send me a post today. You're trying to spend my money.
I am. I'm
putting some
sending
thought into
Matt
that One
Woods
Piece.
Conan original art. I am going to get Matt Woods to buy one of those pages, but that is fostering relationships. Joe.
I see some room in that blue wall there.
Yeah.
There is.
Joe sent me one of his subscription mailers, originals. I'm like, I'll buy one, and he sent it to me. So it's huge. So those are my 3 tips.
That's pretty good. So take the comic book out of the bag, right?
Yeah.
Negotiating is fun.
Yeah.
And foster relationships.
Those are the big 3 from
Hey,
Master.
Doug Bratton. When we're finished with this, we're going to have 5 times, so that's 25 tips. You think there's a book in that, maybe? I don't know.
It's a smarter guide.
I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie, but we're going to just, Doug Bratton, your ears are burning right now, but I was saying early behind the screen that I have a yellow label signed Doug Bratton comic book. So that's pretty cool. A comic guide. So, all right, Stephanie, I'm going to pass it over to Madam. She's going to give her 3 tips and then we'll move on to Wayne.
Right. So I'm a newbie, so I've only been collecting for 6 months. So I barely collected anything. But if I had one thing to tell myself, I'd say double pause at the counter and take a good second to go through your pile and make sure you really want what you're going to get. Because sometimes there's FOMO and you realize when you get home, you should not have bought that. And you're like, what was I thinking? And then there's other times, though, you're like, I've been thinking about that for the past week and I need to go get it. So I went and got a Scarlet Witch soda can here that I was thinking about for the past week.
You got a Scarlet Witch soda can.
I did, and I love it.
Okay.
But it was one of the things I paused the counter. I was like, I don't want it now. I'm going to stop and think. So that's one of the things I would do. And then there was a Doctor Strange at the LCS that was really nice.
Comic book,
And
a Doctor Strange comic book, his origin. Yes.
yes,
Ooh.
and so I asked the
Nice.
the owner about it. And I was like, I saw that and now it's gone. And I was kind of getting FOMO about that. I'm like, why was it gone now? And he's like, oh, I took it down because it was so popular. Everyone was asking about it, so I took it down because now he got FOMO and he was gonna keep it himself. So that was funny. And then I guess my second thing would be I get my own short box and I would hide it somewhere so Steven wouldn't find it. And so all my comics would not be commandeered into his comic book collection, the black hole.
It's not a black hole.
It's a
honey.
black hole of unorganization.
It's a happy place. It's a happy place.
And then number 3, I may have overlooked the possibility. I really like Steven's original art. I think it's really cool. I think it's a real blueprint on the creative process of the artist, and I think it's really neat. So I might be investigating that a little further because it's something to have the, just the original of something too. So.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right. Well, Steph, you can
That's all I got, Wayne.
Well, wait. Stephanie can totally buy original comic book art, and it can get confiscated into the black hole of my. Yes, that would be great. All right. Well, we're turning it over to Wayne.
All right. I actually thought about this for a fair bit. I felt kind of like it's one of those sort of rabbit holes you can go down and really think about the choices you've made and almost if you think too hard about it, you're going to start to kind of kick yourself and feel bad about some of the choices you've made. And so I tried not to get that deep into it. But one of the things I thought about was my early collecting life. So I started collecting maybe when I bought maybe my first book with my own money when I was like 10. And I collected right up to I started university. And in that time, I amassed 4,000 or 5,000 books. And I was a regular every week at the comic store. And so it's like, what would I go back and sort of tell myself, the young myself, if you could go back and do it over again, what would you do differently? And I think I would have invested in some key books. That seems like a no-brainer in today's market, but I mean, I remember going into my local comic book store. It's the biggest comic book store in Toronto, Silver Snail Comics, and they always had a great wall behind the cash, and everything was up. And there's all Silver Age, and there's Golden Age, and these things were, back in the 80s, they were, $100, $200, $300. You can get a really nice Iron Man one for like $75. But for, a teenager who had pocket money, that was a lot of money to spend. In retrospect, instead of spending money on a bunch of things that, although they were fun, and I had a good collecting life, like I did a lot of things. I could play Dungeons and Dragons. So that was an expensive hobby, buying all the books, all the figures, all the dice, modules. It was expensive. I spent a lot of money on that. Posters, figures, Japanese robots. Like if I took all that money and put it towards key comic books, I'd be sitting much prettier right now than I am. And I would go back and tell myself, forget all the other stuff, pick certain books and buy those books. So that would be number one. Be smarter about my collecting. Coming back into the hobby like 4 years ago, one of the things I do, and I've not been shy about this, is I buy at auctions. I buy lots at general auctions, and sometimes at comic-specific auctions, not like eBay, but auction house auctions. Sometimes I will buy a lot because there's one book I want in that lot, but there might be 50 books, and they could be just the most, torn up copies of Life with Archie, or, Casper the Friendly Ghost that's been read through by like children and got juice stains on them. But then you flip along and all of a sudden there's like this key Hulk or key Thor or Silver Age book that you want that looks like it's in okay condition. So then you end up spending, an okay amount of money to get this key. You still think you made a good deal, but you end up with like 50 books or 100 books you don't necessarily want. And I would tell myself not to do that. And it's something I've stopped doing. It really, really adds up, like volume, really, really adds up volume. I've in the last 4 years, I've probably quadrupled. I've got something like 20,000 books. And doing that kind of thing does not make life easier.
I feel like we're in
you
a
want a
support
book,
group.
get the book, but don't get 50 other books you don't want to get the one book. Even if the price is good, it's kind of not worth it. So I think
That's a great
somebody's
tip.
going to say something.
That's a great tip, I think. Yeah.
You know, so I mean, if it's a really awesome deal, like if somebody doesn't see like a major key that's fanned out and it's hidden in something, and like you see it and no one else sees it, I think you can do okay. And in the end, it might be worth it. Like I bought a bunch of books. Maybe there's like 60 or 70 books, and I wanted one book, and it was Thor 337, and it was the newsstand, and I got the whole set for like $135 US. Right now, granted, it all came all bent and all the hell, and it was split apart, and it was a real thing to get it all actually to me. But you know, like in the end, it might, you know, I sell books too, so it's not like I don't pass the books along. But sometimes you're bringing in books and you're like, these books are not going to be easy to unload because they're just not something people want, not in a condition people would want. You'd have to literally take like, here's 10 books for $5 just to kind of get them out the door. So it's a lot of effort and shipping cost and that kind of thing to just realize one book or two books. Like it's a lot. So I think it creates more work than maybe is necessary, and it kind of brings down the overall value once you put in your hours of work into dealing with the books that you're coming in to the door. Yeah. And that kind of ties into number 3, which is something given the number of comics I have, is a real issue for me, which is organization. I still struggle with getting everything organized. I have 15 long boxes that my sister works at Salvation Army, and somebody brought in 15 long boxes. And I mean full, mostly bagged, not boarded, packed. So like 5,000 books. And she's like, do you want them? I'm going to hold them for you. And I'm like, yeah, hold them for me. And then she's like, well, I couldn't really go through them. It's like I'm sight unseen buying 15 long boxes of books. There's a few keys, but most of the good stuff's been taken out. A lot of DC, Joe, a lot of DC. But like I got a good price.
If you go through them and let me know what you got, I might be interested in some of them.
Yeah, I was actually looking for some JLA for you. Actually, I haven't gone through them all yet, but 15 long boxes in my dining room that I didn't plan on that are now in my house. I've got 25 long boxes in my second bedroom. I've got 40 or 50 short boxes in my hallway. and that's not just the miscellaneous stuff that I've got on the tables behind me that I've been working on. I would go back to myself 4 years ago and say, before you buy anything, think about your space. Think about what space you have, how you're going to organize it, and go through what you get as you get it and deal with it, and not go, oh, okay, I'm going to add more, and I'm going to add more, and oh my God, look at all these comics. What am I going to do now? I'm so bowed under that I don't know how to get out from underneath it. Because in my office, I don't even have a proper setup for doing videos, which is something I would like, right? Like it's too small of a space. So I've got to completely reorganize and redo everything just to get functional space where I can work on books properly with enough space to do a proper video setup. And so organization, key. Absolutely know your space, know what you can handle. Don't overdo it. Get to the point that you're managing things, and then maybe add.
You know, Wayne,
I sound exasperated, and it's because it's all coming out.
Breathe, breathe.
And you're not even lying down on the couch, you know?
So, yeah.
I had to listen to Ty for that one, Wayne.
Man,
I'm worried about you.
those are my three. Those are my three at this point. So I don't know if that listens to any discussion or that's like self-explanatory or anyone wants to
I
add
just
their
want
own
you to get the, I just
situations.
want you
or-
to get the video room so you can put up that poster that I got you because I'm waiting to see what it looks like.
I know it's in the roll behind me beside my desk because I literally don't have room. I've got a long table here that I'm working on. I've got a long table behind me. I've got my actual desk. I've got just crap everywhere.
I have to ask you. Did
Sure.
you rebag and board those long boxes that did not even have a board?
I haven't even gotten to them yet. I've done a couple of thousand books. I still want to go through the rest of my 25 or so long boxes in there first, and then the ones down there. I've prepped about with the help of my good friend Daniela. She's really did a lot of this work to help me. She'll sit there and like prep bags and boards for me and then give them to me so that they're ready to go. But I've got about 1,000 more under my desk by my feet, ready to go to start swapping things out because I've got to redo everything. It takes out. It's
GarageCon North. You say that? That's what Chuck said.
Sorry?
GarageCon North.
Great North.
GarageCon. Yeah. Oh man, I could actually open up my garage, fill the entire thing all the way around on the inside, and probably still.
It's insulation. That's good. That's good. Bomb protection.
SquirrelCon.
They use paper
SquirrelCon.
comic book for insulation before.
Trademark
That's the
pending.
thing.
Yeah, TM.
Trademark ending. So those are my three. Those
Those are great. Those are real world. I mean, like the hobby, like we're all doing different stuff. And that sometimes you can go on a Craigslist hunt and fill your truck up full of comics and have to sneak them in when the wife's not looking. And,
And luckily, that's the one benefit. I do not have that problem. I mean, it's me and my guy. So I have no one to answer to except when I look in the mirror and I'm like, what the hell did you do?
As long as there's not stacks or long boxes in your bathroom, then
as long as you can look
Not
in
yet.
the mirror and it's not comic books and you can't even look.
Not yet, but it's getting there. It's getting there.
All right. So listen, for a little bit of levity, I'll go next. If that's
Yes.
okay.
All right, Joe. Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm sure that Mr. Woods and Alan at Climbing Comics will have some really esoteric and interesting things. So
I don't even know
when
how to
did-
spell esoteric.
I don't know. So when I first started thinking about this, I said to myself, I'm going to think back to when I was a kid, right? But I probably have some ideas about when I got back into the hobby. I don't know, whenever it was about 10 or some odd years ago. So there's a bit of levity here, but it's true. All right. Here are the three things that I would tell myself to do as a kid in the early 60s buying comic books. My first thing that I would do is tell myself to buy as many copies of AF-15 as I could find. Okay?
yes,
That's serious.
smart.
The second thing would be to make sure, I think the first ASM I have is number 5, then I have number 9 through whatever. I had a couple of videos on it. I would make sure I'd have the ones that I'm missing, right? And as part of that, 2B, I'd buy every Marvel comic I could find. All right, because that's what's in demand right now. And the third thing would be not to just throw my comics in the corner or whatever else and just don't care about them, but actually try to at least, I mean, there were no bags and boards that I know of in that time, but at least try to keep them in some semblance of order so that they would be in potentially better shape than they are today. of course, no one knew. And, Matt, you remember Roy Thomas told us that. I mean, who the heck knew that these things would be worth any money, at the time when he and I were kind of involved early on in putting this stuff together. And you just didn't know. You just enjoyed them. They were fun. Like I said, you traded them. You took some. I got one of Gary's comics now. Gary, I think it was Gary B, if I know who it was. But anyway, I have one of his comics. Some people probably have some of mine, But as a fourth that I'm throwing in there is that when my mother told me to get rid of half my comics, I would have just told her no. I don't know what would have happened at that point in time. But I think I would have put up a little bit more of a fight potentially, Jen, she didn't say get rid of half the comics, so you got to get rid of some of your comics. So I think I got rid of about half. Now, so that's a little bit of levity, but there's some truth to that. I mean, if I knew today, or if I knew then what I know today, I would seriously do those things, right?
Yeah.
So, but now coming up to today, I think there's a couple of things that came to mind. Because when I got back into comics, like some other people that I've heard, maybe people on this panel, I don't know if it was FOMO so much, but there was probably FOMO involved with that. But I started just buying everything, And then when I got involved, when these comic book companies, like Civil War or some other things, would have all of these, like 7-part series, but there was all these tie-ins. I have every tie-in. And Wayne, like you did, I think it was for Civil War. I still remember it was She-Hulk #8 was the tie-in, right? So I was late. I got the second print. And so it was bothering me to no end. I had first print of the main series of all the tie-ins, but I had the second print of She-Hulk. So I went on eBay, and somebody was selling She-Hulk 1 to 10, all first prints. So guess what I did, Wayne?
You bought them all.
I bought them all so they could have that one there. So
I understand.
And the second print is worth more money today than
it
the
might
first
be.
print.
It might be. I don't know. I gotta find it. But so one of the things that I would do more is probably not go crazy like I did before. I mean, I think I bought some comics. I bought some Alex Ross comics from that series that he did, the Superpower series. And some of them were like, very limited amounts, and I paid good money for them. I don't know what they're worth now. They may not be worth even a tenth of what I paid for them. So I think I would be a little bit more savvy about just buying comics because I started reading something and I wanted the complete run and tie-ins and stuff like that. I don't think I would do that. The second thing I think I would do is something that I've been doing now more lately, and that is focusing on things that I like rather on things that people, quote unquote, say that I should have,
Yeah.
So yeah, what I wouldn't mind having, like, I don't know, I won't even say SM15, but I wouldn't mind having, maybe the Hulk 181 or something like that. Yeah, and maybe if I come across something like that, I might consider buying it. But instead, I'm going to take a look at some of the characters that I liked, going back to the 60s and the 70s. And I've started to do that, starting to look for those characters, but seeing them even beyond that time frame. So for example, something like the Blue Beetle. I have some of the Charlton original Blue Beetle comic books. I have some of the Ted Cord Charlton Blue Beetle comic books. And I always liked the characters because just simply it was something that hit home with me. So now I have the entire first DC series of Blue Beetle as well. So what I've done now is start to focus on characters that I like. And many of them are, B-listers or C-listers. James Gunn will probably have them in his next Peacemaker, a TV show or something like that, because not a lot of people care about them, but I do. So I started getting them. And the good thing about it was, other than sometimes a #1 or some special one, you can get them relatively cheap. And those are ones where people might sell like almost entire runs of them. Captain Carrot by Roy Thomas. Always liked the character. Had some of that. I knew a little bit about it, And then what I do is I went out and some guy was selling 1 to 25. So it was an easy pickup, you know. Started reading through. Then I found out that there was a couple of other appearances, and I started looking for those. To me, that's very fulfilling. I don't know that anybody else cares about that, but I do. So I think focusing and Master Bless, you always say collect what you like or what you love and whatever else, and I think that's part of what I was not really doing. I was getting caught up in all like, the spec stuff and this and that and all of that. And it was taking away from my pleasure really with respect to that. So I stopped doing that. And if I knew about this or I thought about it back in 2007 or 8, when I started up again, that's what I would be doing. And the last thing is, I hear a lot about people, Reggie talks about this, other people talk about this. Oh, I remember this from my childhood, because I used to watch the Saturday morning movie or Master Blaster. I'm sorry, but I started a little bit late with this, but you had mentioned that you started collecting, at one point in time because you saw Batman 89 and that type of thing. Well, to me, I go back and I've had exchanges with Rob Fat Sex of Comics a lot about this. We like a lot of the same things, like the space type of covers that are there, the old stories, even like some of the pre-superhero ones that are there, the covers with the bubble helmets and the weird aliens and stuff like that. I love that type of stuff. And so I started going out and I'm starting to look for some of those. And I'm buying some of those. Again, some of them are worth some money, right? But usually not more than a few $100s. They're not like thousands of dollars. But many of them you can get for less than $100, maybe $20 or even less, depending on the condition that they're in. But when I get one that presents really well, it's just a fun thing to take a look at. And the stories are hokey, as a lot of 1960s type of stuff, early 60s type of stuff, and late 50s are. I remember, some of the science fiction stuff that you guys may have heard about, like Creature from the Black Lagoon. I used to watch that stuff. It just scared the crap out of me, But when you look at it now, you're cracking up laughing, right? But that to me, and like the Silver Age is kind of my age and the thing that I really like. And that's why in my, Monday, top covers thing, I decided to put in a 1960s cover that I like. And a lot of them are these type of like science fiction type of things and weird kind of horror type of ones that are there. And because to me, they're just cool. And so I'm looking out for them, and it's something that I enjoy. So what I'm doing is I'm focusing more on stuff that I like. Now, it doesn't mean I might not pick up something that's good. I was in a comic book store last year here in Florida, and I went there generally looking for the JLA, the Volume 1, which I'm almost done finishing up the run. And I saw a static #1. It was in good shape. I thought the price was really good, so I bought it. So it doesn't mean I won't buy something like that, but that's not going to be my focus anymore. So those are my 6, things that I would tell myself. My time machine went back to the 1960s and shut up to the early 2000s, so that's the way it goes.
I have a question for you, Joe. Because when you collected back in the 60s and so on, I'm assuming there's less social media to like kind of give you that FOMO, like, oh, you have to buy this because someone else thinks it's cool. Did you have like a group of friends that were like, hey, you need to buy this book, even though it wasn't like in your wheelhouse, that you're like, all right, I'll start collecting that?
Well, there were some friends that read comic books, but primarily it was my best friend, John, and he's the guy, I might've mentioned this before in either one of my videos or some other video, maybe Gary B's, hot seat video, whatever, but he knew a lot more about comics than I did. He had some way of finding out about things that I had no clue. So he used to tell me, oh, the new Batman annual is coming out. We have to go get it, or that type of thing. And we would sit on the stoop and, buy our comics and trade them and read them and that type of thing. So there was no social media to speak of. The only social media was potentially your friends. And someone might say, oh, and that's how I found out about Spider-Man. Someone says, oh, you should be reading the Spider-Man book. And so I went to buy it and it was up to #9 already. And then I started trying to look for the earlier ones. I only found number 5. I couldn't find any others at that point in time. So, so there wasn't kind of like eBay or things. You had to go to a bookstore, and if a bookstore had used comics there that they would sell for 5 cents or whatever, and if you found something you liked, you would get it. So the first social media that I would say was of any import was Stanley's Soapbox. That was social media, but he would sit down there and he would talk to you and say things and whatever else, and it would affect what you would want to do and want to get. I mean, I was a huge Marvel fan in the 60s. Huge.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of it was because of the type of things that they had, people liking it, the stories that were there. It was immensely better stories than you saw in DC Comics at that time. So, and you got that from your friends. They would come out and say this or that, or something came up, and you'd go and take a look at it. So yeah, Alan, that was basically the social media at the time.
Yeah, interesting. So then, sorry, I have a quick follow-up question. In terms of like back issues, like, is it really only like bookstores and whatever they had as used books, or did like the corner shop or comic book like shop also have back issues?
Not the only thing that I would consider being back issues. Sometimes they would keep issues there for a month or more, because if he didn't sell them, they in those days used to be able to get refunds for them by either ripping the cover off or the dress, title dress off of it or whatever, that type of thing. So if you went to a newsstand, they probably did not have any issues past what was available at that time. But there were candy stores, as we used to call them. That sold newspapers. Some of them sold like they had like counters where you can actually buy like egg creams and sodas and things like that. And a lot of those used to have either to the side or the back. They used to have these just basically kind of like these stands with the comics in there. And sometimes they would have some that were a month or two old. They wouldn't necessarily send them back right away. But otherwise than that, there was a store around the corner from my house where the guy would buy them for 2 cents and sell it for 5. And so I used to go there sometimes and look and see what he had, because instead of 10 cents or 12 cents, you can get a couple of comics for 10 cents.
Yeah.
I think it's crazy to think, Joe, it must be amazing to think there was a time and someone came up to you and they were like, you have to read this thing. It's called Spider-Man, and you didn't know what they were talking about.
Nope.
I don't know what that world is like. That's like, my mind is blowing over here.
And he was already out for like 10 months counting Amazing Fantasy 15.
Hasn't Spider-Man always been here? Like, didn't they start in the middle?
right.
I'm like, that's in the universe.
Don't destroy my world. Great questions, Alan. Thank you. That was awesome.
Those are good questions, Al.
Yeah.
Okay. Who's next? Alan? Matt?
Sure. I'll go. Like, I know Matt has some really good tips. So
We're keeping the best for last, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No, definitely not the best.
So I'm cheating also, Joe. I do have my 3 that I wish I did start, but I also feel there's things that I did do that actually I learned lots of good lessons from. So I did start those early, but so my first one is, when you go to an LCS, make a plan. All right. So how many of you guys just like have gone to the grocery store and without like a list, and then you come back home with way too many snacks, way too many goodies that you didn't even plan for? So
That's how I shop every week.
Yeah.
Is that what everyone does?
Yeah, exactly, right? That's exactly how I first started collecting comics. I would just go in and I would get stacks and stacks of books where I'm just like, oh, this looks cool, this looks cool, this looks cool, this looks cool. But when I got home, I read it, I'm like, oh, this isn't really that great. So then I have a very limited space for my comics. So I actually feel like I have at least 1 or 2 short boxes full of books that I probably wouldn't have picked up if I knew what did my research or knew what the story was about. So I think going into shopping or going into the LCS with a clear plan, of course, it's always good to have like some flexibility. Just this is how I like to do like traveling also, right? I'm not the type that like, oh, I have to do this every hour of my travel. Like let's spend an afternoon in this area and do this thing. Just like kind of make it a little bit flexible. So that's my number one, because I feel like I've wasted a lot of space with a lot of books that I don't want, basically.
So don't go comic book hunting while you're hungry.
Oh, that's
Yeah, never.
number two. Oh my God. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Blaster. So perfect segue to my number two. Do your research. Oh man. So I'm really big into a lot of like the kind of weird, obscure type of comic books, like the ash cans, like the different types of things. Sorry, Matt, I think I've hit all your points.
It's all good.
One of my purchases I have made before, I thought I had a great deal. And this kind of ties to you, Steve. This is probably my one and only Stanley signed yellow label comic book. And I thought I got a smoking hot deal. So I wanted to show it here because I wanted to see if you guys knew or see something that I did not see. So here we have my Journey into Mystery number 83. Do you know
It's a facsimile or
Whoa.
Was it the Golden Record?
what's missing is the 12 cent right here.
Oh,
Golden
yeah.
Record reprint?
So this is a Golden Record reprint. I thought I got a smoking hot deal when I got this book. Yellow label 8.5, very, very early. I didn't do my research. And to Stephanie's point, any sort of, I guess, either you're hungry or any sort of inebriation on purchasing books is not a good idea. So I would say do your research is definitely my second point. I love this book. It's a great book, but it's not the book that I thought I bought, honestly, right? It's gained so much value since I bought it, and I'm glad I have it in my collection. But it's kind of one of those books that are like, all right, if something needs to leave my collection, then this is okay. So I think that's one of those things. So that's my second point of what I would have told myself when I started recollecting. Do your research. And thirdly, sorry, I keep going back to you, Steve, and like about this. So you've told me this before, and I wish I did this in the beginning, is dive right in. Dive right in. So when I started collecting original art, I was like, all right, I see these maybe 4 different pages. This one looks okay and is more so in my price range. This other one's a little bit higher than my price range, but it's like a home run. I'll still go for the one that's kind of in my price range. After that, I had FOMO for myself, where I wish I had gotten like the home run book, because that home run book now is actually by the artist himself. He's actually bringing it around the world to different cons and showcases to show that specific original art piece. And that original art piece was available to us. So that's kind of one of my kind of regrets. So I think from the 3 things that I've picked, from making a plan, doing your research, and diving right in, it's all because I've missed out on something, but that's those 2 things. So I do have one more thing, or actually 2. I want to echo Wayne's organizing early. I'm so glad that I did organize early, alphabetize, and put certain things in whatever order you want to put it in. I want to ask you guys this, right? Do you guys have just Marvel and then DC and then alphabetize, or is it just all alphabetized? We can talk about that later. Honestly, like, because I have like one short box that's like, organize these books. It's like my kind of triage box. And then everything else is like, all right, alphabetical order. I'm glad I did that early. And then secondly, I think I forgot which one of you mentioned this. Like Matt, you might have mentioned this. Like letting people know that you collect. Because I feel like letting people know that I collect, people have actually told me, about like stuff that they've had and like that they might get rid of. So that definitely is a good thing. That's I wish I told myself early on, because this was more so like a, oh, I want to only keep this with myself and my small collection of people, but I let people know that I collect now and people reach out. So
That's nice.
yeah.
Good.
Great tips.
Right?
Thank you. Sorry, Matt. I feel like I stole one or two of yours.
I even wrote mine down. And you guys are just stealing them. But hey, guys, honestly, awesome 3 tips from everybody. And I really don't have new ones. Now, I have my own little take on them, but they're not brand new. We pretty much discussed them, which brings me kind of, I'm not going to start with my first one yet, but when I get to it, us all having pretty much the same ideas is kind of ties into my number one. But I love how I even wrote down, everyone's taking my 3 things. That was my on this list. But Wayne, you were talking about space being a big thing. Now, I have room for 12,000 raw comic books in these drawers back here, okay? And Steve was asking me, like, what am I going to do when I get there? Because actually, I have room for 12,000, but my kid, the cameraman, he has a drawer that he can get about 1,000 of them in there. So I'm down to about 11,000 potential comic books. I already have over 8,000. So Steve was asking me what I'm going to do. And the architect of my house, okay, which was a guy, he just drew it up on his own. There's a secret room to my house that I showed Steve a little video of. And if I ever need to expand my comic book, hobby or room, I got a little room that I can expand into.
Nice.
So
Another portal to open up to.
there's so many little nooks and crannies in this house. It's kind of cool. But Wayne, so that's what you were talking about, making sure you have space. I have my vision out there ahead of time for the just in case. Now, if I go beyond that, I think I'm doing something wrong. I need to downgrade my comic book collection. But Alan, that 8.5 Journey into Mystery number 83, signed by Stan Lee, that blew my mind. Okay. And I know you're like, well, yeah, it's not the original. Listen, there was a time when a working person could go out and buy those Silver Age keys, Tales of Suspense 39, AF 15, X-Men number 1, Journey into Mystery 83. It's getting to the point where that you can't do that. Where are people going to be putting money into? Those Golden Record reprints are so undervalued right now.
Oh, that's a good point.
That is one of those books that's going to blow up. And 8.5 with a signature on it by Stan the Man, that is a giant grail key to have. So that book, I don't know, that blew my mind. But, all right, so now we're going to start with my number one. Okay. My comic book collection. I've talked about this in different videos and different places. Guys, whenever I was a little kid, there was always comic books in my house, okay? And I'm talking before I could even read. I would have my older cousin who was always around. She would read to me these old comic books, and they were like Casper the Ghost and Bugs Bunny and stuff like that. I remember them more because I really enjoyed the ads that were in them, the X-ray goggles, stuff like that. And then I had a Conan the Barbarian subscription when I was like 7 or 8. I honestly did not get into collecting comics till I was almost 30, okay? It took me a long time to realize, what the stories were in these comic books. Now, this is bringing me in my number one. For the most part, people that I knew on a daily basis, people that I worked with, had no clue that I collected comic books. I had this massive comic book collection that was growing, but nobody even knew that I collected. Collecting was such a private thing for me, and I wasn't ashamed of it. It never came up in conversation, because if people don't know you collect comics, it just generally doesn't come up in conversation. So I wish that I would have engaged in the community at a much earlier point in my collection. This right here, there are 6 people in this chat, or forgive me, in this panel right now, and there are many people in this chat that are some of the nicest people that I have ever had the pleasure of meeting, of having talked to. Guys, I'm on Instagram every single day, you know, having conversations with really great people, and I look forward to those conversations. And I wish I could go back and say, hey, dude, you know, engage more in the comic book community. Because even social media, guys, I still don't have a Facebook. I don't even want a Facebook. Instagram, I was reluctant to even start that. And now it's like one of my favorite things I do. And this YouTube stuff, guys, if you would have known me, you know, 10 years ago, and if somebody would have said, yeah, Matt Woods has a YouTube channel, they would have laughed at you like, yeah, no, not that guy. But I don't know if I'm the only one like that, but this is unique for me to engage in this community like that. But is there anyone else that's really enjoying, you know, the community and how we are growing with social media?
I hate it.
Oh,
Yes, you do.
you're not only just hosting all 6 of us or all 5 of us.
Yeah, this channel was, or this show was your idea, Joe.
It was, but it, you know, it's just like Gary Vee. He makes me do all this stuff because I see him having such a good time, right, Gary? I see him having such a good time with all your shows. I said we should do something like that, you know?
Yeah.
I think that coming back to the hobby like 4 years ago or whatever, the community and the social media and engaging with people was the part that I didn't even think about. I just thought I'm going to come back and buy comics, collect comics, enjoy my comics. And then I think I found Reggie because I was looking for video. I don't know why I was looking for some information on something, and then I just came up with the video, and it's like, oh, there's a video, and there's other people doing videos, and oh, there's a lot of videos, and then I went on Instagram, and oh, there's a lot of people on Instagram. It's like I stopped collecting back before there was the internet, so this was really shocking to me. What a large, welcoming community actually existed when I came back to the hobby. Like, it just wasn't even part of my mental like thought process of being part of collecting. And it's like, oh wow, look at all this. So
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Like, had no idea that there was this vast community of people that are willing to share all the time. And yes, I am the only one. No, Stephanie, I have not met you yet. I was like, I am proud of the fact that I'm the only one that's met everyone here in person, which I think I mentioned once or twice. But Stephanie, next year, GarageCon. But
I'll see you there.
But like, it's just so cool that, you know, we can, like, we'll pick up and drive, you know, 10 hours or fly 5 hours and go cross international borders to go meet with these people that we've never actually met in person, but we know so well that it's like not even a second thought. Like, yeah, why wouldn't I go, you know, meet Wayne down in Charlotte, North Carolina?
yeah. I
Or
mean,
Joe in Providence, Rhode Island.
Going from Canada to North Carolina, just because like there's all these awesome people that I know, and then the ones who couldn't make it being so disappointed I didn't get a chance to meet them, you know. Yeah.
I agree that all comic book collectors are on terrorist watch lists. I agree with you now. I agree.
Hey, that man right there gave me the nickname Big Spoon, and I'm kind of proud of that. Okay?
Something to be proud of, definitely.
Now, my number 2, though, okay? Now, again, I think it was you, Stephanie. You brought this up, okay? FOMO. FOMO is a real thing, okay? And where you see something, you're like, oh, I'm going to try to get this because I've been looking at it, or, you know, it caught your eye. Now, I'm not against FOMO in the sense that I want to get that book. But if you're willing to look around, you're going to find a good deal. Don't overspend because of FOMO, okay? Because you can want something and, you know, you go look for it, nothing wrong with that. But sometimes you see somebody overprice it. They post on eBay or something, and you're like, oh, I got to get it. Well, there's really no need to, because this is a big world. There's a lot of people out there. They're trying to get, you know, move things so they can buy a bigger book. Just take your time, wait, And that book will eventually be out there at a price that, you're more willing to pay for it. Okay. Because I have overpaid for books and then just been sick about it afterwards. Like, why would I spend that much money for this book that probably I could have waited? Or when you do see it at a different price, then you're kicking yourself. So my second thing I would say to myself, never overspend because of FOMO. And I forget which one of you guys did my number 3. Okay. Set goals. Okay. Be more precise. For the most part, I buy my comic books, individually. I've bought like 2 lots in my life. One of them was a long box, like 300 comics. And another one was maybe 50, 60 that had books that I really didn't want. But one thing I'd say is I love collecting runs. And I have a lot of runs here in the collection. But there's some of those keys that I probably could have saved up for and snagged at the time, like the Journey into Mystery 83. Guys, even 15 years ago, that was a relatively not cheap book, but relatively affordable book that if you just would have waited, saved up a little bit month to month, easy book to snag. It's starting to get out of reach. And I wish I would have been more precise when I first started in here. And yes, get my runs, buy my books at the LCS, but put back a little bit more just to pull those Silver Age keys, especially the big ones, the ones I've mentioned, okay? The Tales of Suspense 39, AF 15, the X-Men #1. Those books that 15, 20 years ago, a person could have picked those up if they just would have, been more selective and active in trying to get those. But those are my 3, and I kind of repeated some of you guys, but hey, it's a part of the community, so we all we share this hobby, and we all think a lot alike, and I like that about this.
Well, the problem with repeating some of them is now that Doug Bratton will not make a book out of this because we don't have the 25 that we need. But anyway.
One of the things I was thinking about, based on something Alan said and Matt sort of reiterated, talking about the hobby, letting people know that you collect, getting it out there, not being ashamed of it, not being, worried people are going to look at you funny because you collect, funny books. When I left my last job, I said to a lot of people on the way out, now that's something I do is I collect comics. And I'm still waiting to hear from one person who's cleaning out her husband's collection. Like they're cleaning out their locker. I'm waiting to hear back from them. He stopped collecting 25 years ago. They're in their 60s. He's got a bunch of books, and I can't wait to get my hands on seeing what's in there. But only because I said, by the way, I do comics. And they're like, oh, we have comics. But the thing I wanted to add was, if you're going out to do things like you're at a garage sale and you don't see comics, ask, do you have comics? If you're at a flea market and you see somebody who's got toys and do you have comics? They may have stuff that they're not bringing out, putting on the table. They may have. If you have that conversation with sellers or just whatever, and you bring up comics, you may be surprised to find out they have things that they didn't think that would sell, or they weren't thinking of selling at that moment, that they're like, oh, maybe do you want to look at them? I'll go get them. They're in the house, and they'll bring them out to you. And you never know what kind of deals and great books you may score that you never would have known. And so always talk about it. It's really important. I agree.
Yeah.
That's good advice. Good stuff.
Yeah, that's a great point right there. Because I'm waiting for somebody to show me, this short box that somebody had, hey, my uncle from the early 40s had this old box. I'm waiting for that one of these days.
Wow. That'd be nice.
Yeah,
Listen, you paid $1 for ASM #1. So
It's true.
I don't want to hear it. Your juju is.
You got yours.
I don't want to hear it.
Juju's used up.
It's all used up, buddy.
There's some truth to that. I can't lie.
Well, actually, he paid 50 in all reality, but
I did pay 50. That's true.
I'm glad that I just brought that up, because I just want to say, we're looking backwards and we're trying to provide some insight, lessons learned. Education isn't cheap, right? If you make a mistake, you learn from it. And it's all coming from the core sort of, Reggie, this is fun. We're all doing good. We make a mistake, Alan, and then we end up with a signed, amazing yellow label, like oops, but yay later kind of a deal.
That is the greatest mistake ever.
Right.
Yes.
I sold my ASM 300 9.8 too early for like 10 times profit, and then it doubled after that. Like, wow, feel bad for Madam and Master Blaster. Like, it's
I feel worse for me.
the hobby's so much fun. We just can't drown ourselves in all the comic books there, Wayne. That's all.
Yeah.
I've
sold. I actually sold a book I regret selling. I wish I kept it for myself now. Conan 1. I had a 7.5 Conan 1 and I sold it 3 years ago for
He has it queued up.
$500. And now I'm like, very nice.
Nice.
I regret, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Well,
I don't always have these comic books next to me.
right.
But I did a video.
sleep with that book.
He has them in his bed with him at
And I
night.
just haven't cleaned up from that.
He
video,
walks
so-
around the house with that Conan #1. He goes into multiple rooms. It's always with him.
But I was thinking, like, you're mentioning ASM1, and it's literally right here, and then the book next to it just happened to be the Conan.
Well, I think this was pretty good, pretty informative. Unfortunately, hit the live button too late. So the beginning is like we missed some of Steve's wonderful soliloquy on his #1, but I think you repeated some of that. And Madam Blaster is giving you like the pork boy type of thing there, whatever. But anyway, I think we got it all in. I think it was a pretty good show. I think people that watch it that were live here, hopefully they enjoyed it, and people that see it on replay, I think will learn some stuff. So I think it's been pretty good. So let's finish it off, and let's see, Matt, you're back in YouTube now. Do you have anything interesting coming up?
Oh, I have a video coming out for Monday, so I'm looking forward. That'll drop at 8 a.m. Eastern.
Okay. All right, no hint as to what it's about.
Not yet.
Okay.
I want to keep it a mystery.
Okay. So, Master and Madam Blaster, you have something else coming up this week? Another contest?
Well, I got to get this Doug Bratton, Mark Jewelers ASM book in hand, and I want to show that off and talk about the hobby funding itself. I sold a original art page on Instagram and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
Yep.
I saw that. Yeah. Good.
Going through the process. Want to talk about it.
Wayne, you have anything in store?
Actually, I haven't planned anything for the next little while. I haven't bought anything for the last month. I've been sort of quiet, to be honest with you.
Wow.
So no, not at the moment. Not at the moment.
See, the Matt Wood stuff is like permeating through the entire group there, just taking this time off and all that. How about you, Alan?
Yeah, I do have something coming out this week. I'm working on a video it's not about a comic. It's something very different than it's comic related, but it's not a comic. And this is the first time I'm doing this type of video. So yeah, that's what I'm going to release this week.
Okay. Well, I've got my usual Monday show that's going to come up with some really cool comics and a really interesting 1960s comic. Pretty Fly, you're still here. You got to give me something soon. Haven't heard from you in a while.
I'm working on something for you.
You are.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I can't wait.
It's good.
Wednesday, I was toying with the idea. It already had recorded the comics my mom let me keep, but I also had another one that I had put together based on some comic books that I had gotten. So I'm not sure which one I'm going to show this Wednesday, but whichever one I don't show will be on the following Wednesday. But more importantly, on Tuesday night. That's March 1st, right? On
Yeah.
Tuesday night, I believe it's 8 p.m. I wish I should know the time, but I believe it's 8 p.m. Eastern time. I'm going to be on Rob Fat Stacks of Comics YouTube page. He has I guess it's a bi-weekly show called The Sidekicks Discuss. And so I'm kind of on his list of potential sidekicks, and I was picked for that show. We're going to discuss Batman. So that should be kind of interesting. So check out Rob's channel, The Sidekicks Discuss show on Tuesday, March 1st. I hope I got the date right. I believe it's 8 p.m. Eastern, but check out his channel so you can see it's there. And you will see me again.
Yes.
And, and look at my channel once in a while, too. That's helpful. All right, guys. Anything else before we shut down the show?
Hey, this is always a highlight every single month. I look forward to this show, not just the day of and the hour long that we're on it, but I look forward to the discussions that we have in the week or two leading up to the show. So, guys, kudos to everyone on here. I appreciate you, and just love and enjoy interacting with you guys.
Well,
Ditto, Matt.
Yeah, it's
Ditto.
the same. It's great to have the discussion and to just go through. You never know what's going to happen on this show. Even the moderator might not push the live button, which is just.
I'm just saying to everyone out there, the words that Steve said whenever we weren't live were just mind-shattering and world-changing. I feel that we could have world peace if everybody could have heard what Steve had said. It was that monumental. But
on the bomb
Joe didn't hit
squad,
the live button.
on the bomb squad, we have a motto, and it's initial success or total failure. So when I have to
No
do
in between
something for a second time, I'm already in big trouble. Okay.
All right, guys. Thanks to everybody who showed up. We really appreciate it. If you thought it was good, tell your friends about it. It'll be on replay. Just tell them there won't be any intro. It'll go straight to like me telling Steve, you got to repeat what you said for the last 5 minutes. All right. Take care, guys. We're going to sign off. Take it easy. Take care.
Bye.
I